Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here at Wisteria College. We changed the name from cottage because there's so much learning going on here. It's a real spiritual university going on. So we have the saints from Folkestone and from Hythe and from Canterbury here. So I guess we have the saints from Kent, I guess you could say. The beginning of the Kent Yatra. We're at the foundational stage of the Kent Yatra. We're so happy that you came, all of you. And welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. Thank you for coming again and again. Thank you for becoming friends with us. And we hope that you share and care. Caring means sharing. Sharing means caring. So we've been so careful so that we record the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam. And guess what? We left out a whole chapter. Yeah, I know, it's unbelievable. Everybody's shaking their head. How is that possible? And nobody caught it, but one person in Chichester. Her name is Prafullamuki. And she called me up and she said, "Why didn't you read chapter 3? And I said, "Well, of course you read chapter 3. No, you didn't. You ended with chapter 2 and you went to chapter 4. No, that's not possible. You must have made a mistake." Because she's like a little older and not very savvy technologically, but she knew exactly what she was saying. Because then we ran through our senior sage over here, and he went through the whole thing, and sure enough, we just left out one chapter. So we're going to read the third chapter of the third canto, which you're going to really like, by the way. And it's short enough that we can hear the whole thing tonight with our special guests. Hare Krishna. Before we do, let's hear Sanatana Goswami glorify the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar of the ocean, from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandodita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who were supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhuta dayin, atini chuchatakara, hanamunchagadachin mam prem narit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, we're going to go back to the third chapter of the third canto, and by the grace of our techies, hopefully Radharaman will be able to fit it in the right place in the, chronology of the reading. There's a way to do it. It's not going to be so easy, but it can be done. So it will fit in, so no one will miss, those who were behind, they won't miss a whole chapter. In this chapter, Vidura has met Uddhava. Uddhava was with Krishna just before Krishna left this world. And Krishna instructed Uddhava. And just at that moment, Maitreya Muni just happened to come by. Well, happened means Krishna arranged for him to come by. Nothing just happens in Krishna's pastimes, or anything, any time for that matter. And then Krishna instructed Uddhava that he had to stay in the world rather than go with him, because he was the only one of the eternal associates that didn't go with Krishna. Because he was very intimate, first of all, extremely intelligent, and Krishna had sent him to Vrndavana to see the love of the Brajbasis for Krishna, and of Krishna for the Brajbasis. And plus, he explained to him why it was that, how it was and why it was that he was leaving, and the destruction of the Adhyayana dynasty. So these things needed to be explained to human society. And simultaneously, the only place that Krishna hadn't gone in the most important places in India was Badrikashram, where Narayan Rishi, Narada Muni, and Vyasadeva sit to save the world by their meditations and literary contributions. In the meantime, Vidura had left, before the Battle of Kurukshetra, Vidura had left the palace, having been insulted by Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra. And they, of course, had been, scheming and planning to try to kill the Pandavas their whole lifetime, practically. And push was coming to shove. And it came to shove. But Vidura left before that all happened. So Vidura didn't know anything about these things. He didn't know that Krishna had left. He didn't know that the Battle of Kurukshetra had killed all of his friends and relatives, etc., etc. So they met. When Uddhava was traveling to Badrikashram, he met Uddhava. And by Krishna's arrangement, Maitreya Muni was nearby also. And so this whole pastime that's going to happen now, which we've already heard some of, but we're going back now in time. Vidura has met Uddhava, or Uddhava has met Vidura, and Vidura has asked Uddhava about all of his friends and relatives. And Uddhava, when he asked him, he went into a feeling, a deep spiritual trance of separation, and began to remember Krishna's pastimes. And he just finished Krishna's pastimes in Vrndavana, and now he's going to remember Krishna's pastimes out of Vrndavana, which is the chapter that we skipped. Then, after he kind of remembers all these things and experiences all this transcendental love and ecstasy, then he can speak. And then he begins to answer the questions. In the meantime, he's speaking, but he's in a trance. He's just remembering Krishna's pastimes. And of course, Vidura is getting the benefit, as we will. Third canto, chapter 3, text 1. The Lord's pastimes out of Vrndavana. Sri Uddhava said, thereafter, Lord Krishna went to Mathura city with Sri Baladev to please their parents, they dragged Kamsa, the leader of the public enemies, down from his throne and killed him, pulling him along the ground with great strength. Purport. King Kamsa's death is only briefly described here, because such pastimes are vividly and elaborately described in the 10th canto. The Lord proved to be a worthy son of his parents, even at the age of 16 years. Both brothers, Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev, went to Mathura from Vrndavana and killed their maternal uncle, who had given so much trouble to their parents, Vasudeva and Devaki. Kamsa was a great giant, and Vasudeva and Devaki never thought that Krishna and Balarama, or Baladev, could be able to kill such a great and strong enemy. When the two brothers attacked Kamsa on the throne, their parents feared that now Kamsa would finally get the opportunity to kill their sons, whom they had hidden for so long in the house of Nanda Maharaj. The parents of the Lord, due to parental affection, felt extreme danger, and they almost fainted. Just to convince them that they had actually killed Kamsa, Krishna and Baladev pulled Kamsa's dead body along the ground to encourage them. I mean, it may sound cruel, but just try to remember that Kamsa had killed the babies of Devaki, 6 of them, one after the other, mercilessly. So this person, he deserved 6 death sentences. Well, here they don't have death, but in America he would have gotten killed 6 times, if they could have. Anyway, text 2. The Lord learned all the Vedas with their different branches simply by hearing them once from his teacher, Sandipani Muni, whom he rewarded by bringing back his dead son from the region of Yamaloka. Purport. No one but the Supreme Lord can become well-versed in all the branches of Vedic wisdom simply by hearing once from his teacher. Nor can anyone bring a dead body back to life after the soul has already gone to the region of Yamaraj. But Lord Krishna ventured to the planet of Yamaloka and found the dead son of his teacher and brought him back to his father as a reward for the instructions received. The Lord is constitutionally well versed in all the Vedas, and yet to teach by example that everyone must go to learn the Vedas from an authorized teacher and must satisfy the teacher by service and reward, he himself adopted this system. The Lord offered his services to his teacher, Sandipani Muni, and the Muni, knowing the power of the Lord, asked something which was impossible to be done by anyone else. The teacher asked that his beloved son, who had died, be brought back to him, and the Lord fulfilled the request. The Lord is not, therefore, an ingrate to anyone who renders him some sort of service. The devotees of the Lord, who always engage in his loving service, are never to be disappointed in the progressive march of devotional service. Text 3. Attracted by the beauty and fortune of Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, many great princes and kings assembled to marry her. But Lord Krishna, stepping over the other hopeful candidates, carried her away as his own share, as Garuda carried away nectar. Purport. Princess Rukmini, the daughter of King Bhishmaka, was actually as attractive as fortune itself, because she was as valuable as gold, both in color and in value. Since the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is the property of the Supreme Lord, Rukmini was actually meant for Lord Krishna. But Shishupal was selected as her bridegroom by Rukmini's elder brother, although King Bhishmaka wanted his daughter to be married to Krishna. Rukmini invited Krishna to take her away from the clutches of Shishupal, And so when the bridegroom Shishupal came there with his party, with the desire to marry Rukmini, Krishna all of a sudden swept her from the scene, stepping over the heads of all the princes there, just as Garuda carried away nectar from the hands of the demigods. The incident of Krishna's kidnapping Rukmini will be clearly explained in the 10th canto. Text 4. By subduing 7 bulls whose noses were not pierced, the Lord achieved the hand of Princess Nagnajiti in the open competition to select her bridegroom. Although the Lord was victorious, his competitors asked the hand of the princess, and thus there was a fight. Well equipped with weapons, the Lord killed or wounded all of them, but he was not hurt himself. Text 5. Just to please his dear wife, the Lord brought back the Parijata tree from heaven, just as an ordinary husband would do. But Indra, the king of heaven, induced by his wives, henpecked as he was, ran after the Lord with full force to fight him. Purport. The Lord once went to the heavenly planets to present an earring to Aditi, the mother of the demigods, and his wife Satyabhama also went with him. There is a special flowering tree called the Parijata, which grows only in the heavenly planets. And Satyabhama wanted this tree. Just to please his wife, like an ordinary husband, the Lord brought back the tree and thus enraged Vajri, or the controller of the thunderbolt. Indra's wives inspired him to run after the Lord to fight. And Indra, because he was a henpecked husband and also a fool, listened to them and dared to fight with Krishna. He was a fool on this occasion because he forgot that everything belongs to Krishna. There was no fault on the part of the Lord, even though he took away the tree from the heavenly kingdom. But because Indra was henpecked, dominated by his beautiful wives like Shachi, he became a fool, just as all persons who are dominated by their wives are generally foolish. Indra thought that Krishna was a henpecked husband, who only by the will of his wife Satyabhama took away the property of heaven, and therefore he thought that Krishna could be punished. He forgot that the Lord is the proprietor of everything and cannot be henpecked. The Lord is fully independent, and by his will only, he can have hundreds and thousands of wives like Satyabhama. He was not, therefore, attached to Satyabhama because she was a beautiful wife, but he was pleased with her devotional service and thus wanted to reciprocate the unalloyed devotion of his devotee. Text 6. Narakasura, the son of Daritri, the earth, tried to grasp the whole sky, and for this he was killed by the Lord in a fight. His mother then prayed to the Lord. This led to the return of the kingdom to the son of Narakasura, and thus the Lord entered the house of the demon. Purport. It is said in other Puranas that Narakasura was the son of Daritri, the earth, by the Lord himself. But he became a demon due to the bad association of Bana, another demon. An atheist is called a demon, and it is a fact that even a person born of good parents can turn into a demon by bad association. Birth is not always the criterion of goodness, unless and until one is trained in the culture of good association, one cannot become good. Text 7. There in the house of the demon, all the princesses kidnapped by Narakasura at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy, and shyness, and offered to be his wives. Purport. Narakasura kidnapped many daughters of great kings and kept them imprisoned in his palace. But when he was killed by the Lord and the Lord entered the house of the demon, all the princesses were enlivened with joy and offered to become his wives, because the Lord is the only friend of the distressed. Unless the Lord accepted them, there would be no chance of their being married, because the demon kidnapped them from their father's custody, and therefore no one would agree to marry them. According to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. Since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of their fathers, it would have been difficult for them to have any husband other than the Lord himself. Text 8. All those princesses were lodged in different apartments, and the Lord simultaneously assumed different bodily expansions, exactly matching each and every princess. He accepted their hands in perfect rituals by his internal potency. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita 5.33, the Lord is described as follows in regard to his innumerable plenary expansions. Advaitam achyutam anadam ananta rupam adyam puranam purusham navayovanam cha vedeshu durlabam adurlabam atmabhakto govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. The Lord Govinda, whom I worship, is the original personality of Godhead. He is non-different from his innumerable plenary expansions, who are all infallible, original, and unlimited, and who have eternal forms. Although he is primeval, the oldest personality, he is always fresh and young. By his internal potency, the Lord can expand himself into various personalities of Swayam Prakash, and again into Prabhava and Vaibhava forms, and all of them are non-different from one another. The forms into which the Lord expanded to marry the princesses in different apartments were all slightly different, just to match each and every one of them. They are all Vaibhava Vilas forms of the Lord, and are effected by his internal potency, Yogamaya. Text 9. Just to expand himself according to his transcendental features, the Lord begot in each and every one of them 10 offspring with exactly his own qualities. Text 10. Kalayavana, the king of Magadha, and Shalva attacked the city of Mathura. But when the city was encircled by their soldiers, the Lord refrained from killing them personally, just to show the power of his own men. Purport. After the death of Kamsa, when Mathura was encircled by the soldiers of Kalayavana, Jarasandha, and Shalva, the Lord seemingly fled from the city, and thus he is known as Ranchor, or one who fled from fighting. Actually, the fact was that the Lord wanted to kill them through the agency of his own men, devotees like Muchukunda and Bhima. Kalayavana and the king of Magadha were killed by Muchukunda and Bhima, respectively, who acted as agents of the Lord. By such acts, the Lord wanted to exhibit the prowess of his devotees, as if he were personally unable to fight, but his devotees could kill them. The relationship of the Lord with his devotees is a very happy one. Actually, the Lord descended at the request of Brahma in order to kill all the undesirables of the world. But to divide the share of glory, he sometimes engaged his devotees to take the credit. The battle of Kurukshetra was designed by the Lord himself, but just to give credit to his devotee Arjuna, Nimitta Matram, Bhavasavyasachin, he played the part of the charioteer, while Arjuna was given the chance to play the fighter, and thus become the hero of the battle of Kurukshetra. What he wants to do himself by his transcendental plans, he executes through his confidential devotees. That is the way of the Lord's mercy towards his pure, unalloyed devotees. Text 11. of kings like Shambhara, Dvidvida, Bana, Mura, Balvala, and many other demons, such as Dantavakra. Some he killed himself, and some he caused to be killed by others, Sri Baladeva, etc. Text 12. Then, O Vidura, the Lord caused all the kings, both the enemies and those on the side of your fighting nephews, to be killed on the battle of Kurukshetra. All those kings were so great and strong that the earth seemed to shake as they traversed the war field. 13. Duryodhana was bereft of his fortune and duration of life because of the intricacy of ill advice given by Karna, Dushasana, and Saubala. When he lay on the ground with his followers, his thighs broken, although he was powerful, the Lord was not happy to see the scene. Purport. The fall of Duryodhana, the leading son of Dhritarashtra, was not pleasing to the Lord, although he was on the side of Arjuna, and it was he who advised Bhima how to break the thighs of Duryodhana while the fight was going on. The Lord is constrained to award punishment upon the wrongdoer, but he is not happy to award such punishments, because the living entities are originally his parts and parcels. He is harder than the thunderbolt for the wrongdoer, and softer than the rose for the faithful. The wrongdoer is misled by bad associates and by ill advice, which is against the established principles of the Lord's order, and thus he becomes subject to punishment. The surest path to happiness is to live by the principles laid down by the Lord and not disobey his established laws, which are enunciated in the Vedas and the Puranas for the forgetful living entities. Text 14. Later, after the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord said, "The abatement of the earth's great burden, 18 Aukshohinis, has now been effected with the help of Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Bhima. But what is this? There is still the great strength of the Yadu dynasty, born of myself, which may be a more unbearable burden." Purport. It is a wrong theory that due to an increase in population, the world becomes overburdened, and therefore there are wars and other annihilating processes. The earth is never overburdened. The heaviest mountains and oceans on the face of the earth hold more living entities than there are human beings, and they are not overburdened. If a census were taken of all the living beings on the surface of the earth, certainly it would be found that the number of humans is not even 5% of the total number of living beings. If the birth rate of human beings is increasing, then the birth rate of other living beings is increasing proportionately. The birth rate of lower animals, beasts, aquatics, birds, and so on, is far greater than that of human beings. There is an adequate arrangement for food for all the living beings all over the earth by the order of the Supreme Lord, and he can arrange more and more if there is actually a disproportionate increase of the living beings. Therefore, there is no question of an increase in population causing a burden. The earth became overburdened due to dharma glani, or irregular discharge of the Lord's desire. The Lord appeared on the earth to curb the increase in miscreants, and not the increase in population, as is wrongly put forward by the mundane economists. When Lord Krishna appeared, there had been a sufficient increase in miscreants who had violated the desire of the Lord. The material creation is meant for fulfilling the desire of the Lord, and his desire is that the conditioned souls who are unfit to enter into the kingdom of God have a chance to improve their conditions for entering. The entire process of cosmic arrangement is intended just to give a chance to the conditioned souls to enter the kingdom of God, and there is an adequate arrangement for their maintenance by the nature of the Lord. Therefore, although there may be a great increase in population on the surface of the earth, if the people are exactly in line with God consciousness and are not miscreants, such a burden on the earth is a source of pleasure for her. There are two kinds of burdens. There is the burden of the beast and the burden of love. The burden of the beast is unbearable, but the burden of love is a source of pleasure. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti describes the burden of love very practically. He says that the burden of the husband on the young wife, the burden of the child on the lap of the mother, and the burden of wealth on the businessman, although actually burdens from the viewpoint of heaviness, are sources of pleasure. And in the absence of such burdensome objects, one may feel the burden of separation, which is heavier to bear than the actual burden of love. When Lord Krishna referred to the burden of the Yadu dynasty on the earth, he referred to something different than the burden of the beast. The large numbers of family members born of Lord Krishna counted to some millions, and were certainly a great increase in the population of the earth. But because all of them were expansions of the Lord himself by his transcendental plenary expansions, they were a source of great pleasure for the earth. When the Lord referred to them in connection with the burden of the earth, he had in mind their imminent disappearance from the earth. All the members of the family of Lord Krishna were incarnations of different demigods, and they were to disappear from the surface of the earth along with the Lord. When he referred to the unbearable heaviness on the earth in connection with the Yadu dynasty, he was referring to the burden of their separation. Srila Jiva Goswami confirms this inference. Text 15. When they quarrel among themselves, influenced by intoxication, with their eyes red like copper because of drinking madhu, then only will they disappear. Otherwise, it will not be possible. On my disappearance, this incident will take place. Purport. The Lord and his associates appear and disappear by the will of the Lord. They are not subjected to the laws of material nature. No one was able to kill the family of the Lord, nor was there any possibility of their natural death by the laws of nature. The only means, therefore, for their disappearance was the make-show of a fight amongst themselves, as if brawling in intoxication due to drinking. That so-called fighting would also take place by the will of the Lord. Otherwise, there would be no cause for their fighting. Just as Arjuna was made to be illusioned by family affection, and thus the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, so the Yadu dynasty was made to be intoxicated by the will of the Lord and nothing more. The devotees and associates of the Lord are completely surrendered souls. Thus they are transcendental instruments in the hands of the Lord and can be used in any way the Lord desires. The pure devotees also enjoy such pastimes of the Lord because they want to see him happy. Devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in pursuit of the desires of the Lord. And this cooperation of the devotees with the Lord makes a perfect scene of the Lord's pastimes. Text 16. Lord Sri Krishna, thus thinking to himself, established Maharaj Yudhishthira in the position of supreme control of the world in order to show the ideal of administration on the path of piety. Text 17. The embryo of Puru's descendant begotten by the great hero Abhimanyu in the womb of Uttara, his wife, was burnt by the weapon of the son of Drona, but later he was again protected by the Lord. Purport. The embryonic body of Parikshit, which was forming after Uttara's impregnation by Abhimanyu, the great hero, was burned by the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, but a second body was given by the Lord within the womb, and thus the descendant of Puru was saved. This incident is the direct proof that the body and the living entity, the spiritual spark, are different. When the living entity takes shelter in the womb of a woman through the injection of the semen of a man, there is an emulsification of the man's and woman's discharges, and thus a body is formed the size of a pea, gradually developing into a complete body. But if the developing embryo is destroyed in some way or other, the living entity has to take shelter in another body, in the womb of another woman. The particular living entity who was selected to be the descendant of Maharaj Puru, or the Pandavas, was not an ordinary living entity, and by the superior will of the Lord, he was destined to be the successor to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Therefore, when Ashwatthama destroyed the embryo of Maharaj Parikshit, the Lord, by his own internal potency, entered into the womb of Uttara by his plenary portion, just to give audience to the would-be Maharaj Parikshit, who was in great danger. By his appearance within the womb, the Lord encouraged the child and gave him complete protection in a new body by his omnipotency. By his power of omnipresence, he was present both inside and outside of Uttara and other members of the Pandava family. Text 18. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform 3 horse sacrifices, and Maharaj Yudhishthira, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal monarchical representative on the earth, because he was a constant follower of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. As stated in the Vedas, Ishopanishad, the Lord is the proprietor of the entire manifested cosmic creation, which presents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Anyone who violates the plan is punished by the law of nature, which is acting by the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Yudhishthira was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord, and Maharaj Yudhishthira was the ideal monarch on this supreme principle. Both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties, and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. Text 19. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwaraka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Purport. While Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor of the earth, Lord Sri Krishna was the king of Dwarka and was known as Dwarkadish. Like other subordinate kings, he was under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthir. Although Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme emperor of the entire creation, while he was on this earth, he never violated the principles of the Vedic conjunctions because they are the guide for human life. Regulated human life, according to the Vedic principles, which are based on the system of knowledge called Sankhya philosophy, is the real way of enjoyment of the necessities of life. Without such knowledge, detachment, and custom, the so-called human civilization is no more than an animal society of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. The Lord was acting freely as he willed. Yet by his practical example, he taught not to lead a life which goes against the principles of detachment and knowledge. Attainment of knowledge and detachment, as very elaborately discussed in Sankhya philosophy, is the real perfection in life. Knowledge means to know that the mission of the human form of life is to end all the miseries of material existence, and that in spite of having to fulfill the bodily necessities in a regulated way, one must be detached from such animal life. Fulfilling the demands of the body is animal life, and fulfilling the mission of the spirit soul is the human mission. Text 20. He was there in his transcendental body, the residence of the goddess of fortune, with his usual gentle and sweetly smiling face, his nectarian words, and his flawless character. Purport. In the previous verse, it is described that Lord Krishna, being situated in the truths of Sankhya philosophy, is detached from all kinds of matter. In the present verse, it is described that he is the residence of the goddess of fortune. These two things are not at all contradictory. Lord Krishna is detached from the variegatedness of the inferior nature, but he is in eternal, blissful enjoyment of the spiritual nature, or his internal potency. One who has a poor fund of knowledge cannot understand this distinction between the external and internal potencies. In the Bhagavad Gita, the internal potency is described as para prakriti. In the Vishnu Purana also, the internal potency of Vishnu is described as para shakti. The Lord is never detached from the association of para shakti. This para shakti and her manifestations are described in the Brahma Samhita as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhabhita. The Lord is eternally joyful and cognizant in the taste derived from such transcendental bliss. Negation of the variegatedness of the inferior energy does not necessitate negation of the positive transcendental bliss of the spiritual world. Therefore, the Lord's gentleness, his smile, his character, and everything related to him are all transcendental. Such manifestations of the internal potency are the reality, of which the material shadow is only a temporary representation from which everyone with proper knowledge must be detached. Text 21. The Lord enjoyed his pastimes, both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Purport. The Lord enjoyed in this world with his pure devotees. Although he is the personality of Godhead and is transcendental to all material attachment, he nevertheless exhibited much attachment for his pure devotees on the earth, as well as for the demigods who engage in his service in the heavenly planets as powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. He displays special attachment for his family members, the Yadus, as well as for his 16,000 wives, who had the opportunity to meet him in the leisure hours of night. All these attachments of the Lord are manifestations of his internal potency, of which the external potency is only a shadow representation. In the Skanda Purana, Prabhas Kanda, in the topics discussed between Lord Shiva and Gauri, there is a confirmation of the manifestation of Lord Krishna's internal potency. There is mention of the Lord's meeting with 16,000 cowherd damsels, although he is the Hamsa, transcendental supersoul and maintainer of all living entities. The 16,000 cowherd damsels are a display of 16 varieties of internal potency. This will be more elaborately explained in the 10th canto. It is said there that Lord Krishna is just like the moon, and the cowherd damsels are like the stars around the moon. 22. The Lord was thus engaged in household life for many, many years, but at last his attachment from ephemeral sex life was fully manifested. Purport. Even though the Lord is never attached to any kind of material sex life, as the universal teacher, he remained a householder for many, many years, just to teach others how one should live in householder life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word samajayata means fully exhibited. In all his activities, while present on the earth, the Lord exhibited detachment. This was fully displayed when he wanted to teach by example that one should not remain attached to household life for all the days of one's life. One should naturally develop detachment as a matter of course. The Lord's detachment from household life does not indicate detachment from his eternal associates, the transcendental cowherd damsels. But the Lord desired to end his so-called attachment to the three modes of material nature. He can never be detached from the service of his transcendental associates like Rukmini and other goddesses of fortune, as described in the Brahma Samhita, Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasam Brahmasevyamanam. Text 23. Every living entity is controlled by a supernatural force. And thus his sense enjoyment is also under the control of that supernatural force. No one, therefore, can put his faith in Lord Krishna's transcendental sense activities, but one who has become a devotee of the Lord by rendering devotional service. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, no one but a devotee can understand the transcendental birth and activities of the Lord. The same fact is herein corroborated. No one but one who is enlightened by the devotional service of the Lord can understand the difference between the Lord's activities and those of others who are controlled by the supernatural force. The sense enjoyment of all animals, men and demigods within the purview of the material universe is controlled by the supernatural force called the Prakriti or Daivi Maya. No one is independent in obtaining sense enjoyment, and everyone in this material world is after sense enjoyment. Persons who are themselves under the control of supernatural power cannot believe that Lord Krishna is not under any control beyond himself in the matter of sense enjoyment. They cannot understand that his senses are transcendental. In the Brahma Samhita, the Lord's senses are described as omnipotent, That is, with any sense, he can perform the activities of the other senses. One who has limited senses cannot believe that the Lord can eat by his transcendental power of hearing and perform the act of sex life simply by seeing. The controlled living entity cannot even dream of such sense activities in his conditional life. But simply by the activities of Bhakti Yoga, he can understand that the Lord and his activities are always transcendental. As the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati Yavanyas Chasmitat Pataha. One cannot know even a fraction of the activities of the Lord if he is not a pure devotee of the Lord. Text 24. Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties. And thus, as described by the Lord, the sages, desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. Purport. The associates of the Lord, who were playing the part of princely descendants of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties, were not ordinary living entities. It is not possible that they could offend any saintly man or sage, nor could the sages, who were all pure devotees of the Lord, be influenced to anger by any of these sporting activities of the princes born in the holy dynasties of Yadu or Bhoja, wherein the Lord himself appeared as a descendant. The cursing of the princes by the sages was another transcendental pastime of the Lord to make a show of anger. The princes were cursed in order that one may know that even the descendants of the Lord, who could never be vanquished by any act of material nature, were subjected to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. One should therefore take great care and attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee of the Lord. 25. A few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhas, while those who were eternal associates of the Lord did not leave, but remained in Dwarka. 26. After arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of this place of pilgrimage, they offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the brahmanas in royal charity. Purport. Amongst the devotees of the Lord there are several divisions, mainly Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas. The Nitya Siddha devotees never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, even though they sometimes come onto the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. The Sadhana Siddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls. Out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. The mixed devotees are sometimes enthusiastic about fruitive activities and are habituated to philosophical speculation. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. For pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Prabhas performed all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage and offered their pious actions to their forefathers and others. As a rule, every human being is indebted to God, the demigods, great sages, other living entities, people in general, forefathers, etc., for various contributions received from them. Thus, everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus who went to the Prabhas pilgrimage site performed their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows in royal charity, as described in the following verse. Text 27. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold, gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skin seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. Purport. All these charities were meant for the Brahmanas, whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of society, both spiritually and materially. The Brahmanas were not giving their services as paid servants, but the society provided them with all necessities. It was arranged for some of the Brahmanas who were in difficulty for marriage to be given girls. The Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. The Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed, and in exchange, the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. When the Brahmana class or caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society, although they had no Brahminical qualifications, they degraded themselves into Brahma Bandhus, or disqualified Brahmanas. And thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. As described in the Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is the creation of the Lord and is arranged according to the quality of work rendered to society, and not in terms of birthright, as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. 28. Thereafter, they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of Godhead, and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the Brahmanas. Purport. The behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu in the pilgrimage site of Prabhas was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. The perfection of human life is attained by following three principles of civilization: protecting the cows, protecting the Brahminical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a pure devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world, where there is no birth, no death, no disease, and no old age. That is the highest perfectional aim of human life. Within this aim, any amount of human advancement in so-called comforts can only bring the defeat. Without this aim, any amount of material advancement in so-called comforts can only bring the defeat of the human form of life. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted by the devotees as mercy of the Lord. After all, the Lord supplies all kinds of foodstuff, both to the human being and to other animals. A human being must be conscious of the fact that all foodstuffs, namely grains, vegetables, milk, water, and so on, the prime necessities of life, are supplied for mankind by the Lord, and such foodstuffs cannot be manufactured by any scientist or materialist in a laboratory or factory established by human effort. The intelligent class of men are called Brahmanas, and those who have realized the absolute truth in his supreme personal feature are called Vaishnavas. But both of them accept foodstuffs, which are the remnants of sacrifice. Sacrifice is ultimately meant to satisfy the Yajna Purusha, Vishnu. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one who accepts foodstuffs that are the remnants of sacrifice is free from all sinful reactions, and that one who cooks foodstuffs only for maintenance of his body takes in all kinds of sins, which lead only to suffering. The foodstuffs prepared by the Yadus at the Prabhas pilgrimage site to offer to the bona fide Brahmanas there were all offered to the personality of Godhead Vishnu. The Yadus offered their sincere obeisances. There's a little mistake there. There's a mark in between the B and the E. You see it? Mm-hmm. Make a note. The Yadus offered their sincere obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. The Yadus, or any enlightened family in Vedic culture, are trained for attainment of human perfection by total cooperation of service between the different divisions of the social orders. The word Uru Rasam is also significant here. Hundreds of delicacies can be prepared simply by the combination of grains, vegetables, and milk. All such preparations are in the mode of goodness and therefore may be offered to the personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord accepts only foodstuffs which are within the range of fruits, flowers, leaves, and liquids, provided they are offered in complete devotional service. Devotional service is the only criterion for a bona fide offering to the Lord. The Lord assures that He positively eats such foodstuffs offered by the devotees. So, judging from all sides, the Yadus were perfectly trained civilized persons, and their being cursed by the Brahmana sages was only by the desire of the Lord. The whole incident was a warning to all concerned that no one should behave lightly with Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, third chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Lord's Pastimes out of Vrndavana. So now that chapter, we've already read the next chapter, 4, 5, and 6. And tomorrow we will start 7 in Delhi. Well, no, the day after tomorrow, sorry. Tomorrow we'll be flying through the sky without, maybe they will have, anyway, we won't be doing it.
Be cool on the plane.
Yeah, that would be cool. But I don't think, we have the stewardesses come and watch, you know,
Yeah.
stewards and stewardesses. So, as I said earlier, before we started the reading, our man on the scene, Radharaman Prabhu, will attempt or get somebody to, or somehow or other, I see you're delegating already, before it even happened, you're already delegating?
You talking about the questions?
No, I'm talking about the arrangement of those to be put in proper order. Because in Facebook you can't rearrange them. They're put in the order that they're recorded.
He has to do it with an administrator, because I don't have access to it.
Well, that means it can be done on my phone.
Yeah.
Because I have administrative. So anyway, either you or Davide, one of the two has to do it. Have to do it.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
The thing is, he'll be in India, and it may not be as easy. Well, I mean, we should have a fairly good connection, but sometimes it's dodgy. When it's on, it's pretty good. It's good enough to do this.
Like here? Kind of dodgy?
Better. Not much.
Then we can do it, yeah.
Not much, but better than here.
Yeah.
But we have also different, like they have here, different, what do they call them? Different service providers with different features, and there's some that have very fast and strong signals, and we'll be able to get something done where we can have a fast enough signal to do this. Yeah, for sure. That's one thing we have to arrange when we get to Delhi. I have to fire up my SIM card again, get it going. All right, so let's have some reflections. Let's discuss this Krishna consciousness chapter. Yes, Radharman. I never would have guessed. If I could comment, I mean, you should comment. What do you mean me? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just felt embarrassed. I'm not qualified to comment, but if I can read the paragraph.
That's your qualification. Go ahead.
The pure devotees, this is the purport to 26. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. So that was the first point. I'm just wondering whether that tallies with what you often quote from Srila Prabhupada Maharaj, that devotees can be anywhere.
Well, the exact quote from Prabhupada was, devotees should be everywhere. Pure devotees should be everywhere means they should be in every sector of human life, in every place, every geography, everywhere, in all different services. There should be devotees doing everything. What a world that would be. When we come here together and hear like this and just associate together, the atmosphere created is so sweet and so natural, so satisfying to the senses and the heart. And the whole world could be like that if everyone would become pure devotees of Krishna. That was, yeah, go ahead.
And the second thing was, if you could comment on Maharaj, is that the continuation of that paragraph where it says, pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. The great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection.
Yeah. Well, that's a very deep question, because it's one thing to go to a place of pilgrimage to try to be a kind of transcendental tourist, but pure devotees of the Lord also go to the places where the Lord has his transcendental pastimes and enjoy the atmosphere there and discuss the Lord's pastimes in that environment and it's very potent. It's especially potent. But it's true that what we've been finding by doing this reading every single night, in every place we do it in, the atmosphere becomes changed. There's no question about it. No question. So that's what it means. It's not necessary to go to holy places of pilgrimage, to worship the Lord, when you can hear and chant about the Lord anywhere, and that place becomes a holy place of pilgrimage. But mixed devotees, they may go to a place of pilgrimage because it stimulates and helps them to increase in their devotional enthusiasm. But of all the places of pilgrimage, Vrindavan and the area of Brajamandala is supreme. So once you find out what Brajadam is, and if you're there, if you go other places, it's considered to be an offense. When Krishna was there, and Nanda Maharaj wanted to go to the Ganges, so he got everybody together and he was ready to go, and Krishna says, "Why do you want to leave this place? This is our place. This is home. I'll make the Ganges." And they went from his mind, he brought the Ganges right there, and part of that now is called Manisiganga. But it was actually a tributary of the Ganges that came on Krishna's order, came flowing down through Braj, right through that area. And they said, "Oh, okay." They just took the bath right there. They didn't go anyplace. And Prabhupada used to chide the residents of Calcutta, where the Ganges flows right by their doorstep practically, and they'll take the trouble to to go all the way to Hardwar or some Varanasi or some place and bathe in the Ganges, where they're bathing in the Ganges right in front of their doorstep, and it's the same Ganges. So like that, if they have that mentality, then it's not much use, that mentality. It's an unnecessary endeavor. What else?
Last question discussion I had with Manchester earlier this morning about why is India such a special land, like places of pilgrimage? Why does Krishna and his avatars always seem to appear in India? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. He appears everywhere. He appears in other places also. But he has his places. Just like, why do you live where you live? And, why do you go back to that place after you've been traveling or doing or working, whatever you do? Mm-hmm. It's your home. So he has these eternal homes, and they're located in this place and in that particular part of this place. We're thinking in terms of India and non-India, but when Krishna was here, it wasn't India and America and England and this and that. It was all Bharatvarsha. It was all the same planet. It was under the same flag, and Yudhishthira was the emperor. There were states, king states, but they were all under the banner, under the flag of Maharaj Yudhishthira, or whoever was the emperor of in Hastinapur, New Delhi. So it depends on how you look at it, and relatively now they've drawn all these borders and claim proprietorship in different nationalities and everything, but it's very artificial. Mm-hmm. So those places are eternal places that Krishna comes to. Whenever he comes to this universe, he goes right there. It's his home. It's non-different than the original Goloka Vrindavan, that area where Krishna, came. And the other incarnations of Krishna come, and those places are replicas of the different Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky.
So does that mean that the Earth is a very particular special planet?
Yes. But there are incarnations of Krishna on all the planets, on Earth, many of the planets. Like in Brahma's planet, the highest planet, Satyaloka, then there's 1,000-headed Mahapurusha incarnation, which is none different than Mahavishnu. So in different places, there are different forms of the Lord, and the devotees who have the same mood or want to worship in that form, they go there. And when they leave their bodies, they go to the Vaikuntha planet where that form is predominant. So every one of us has a relationship with Krishna eternally. We have an identity in the spiritual world eternally. And it's in a particular mood. And Krishna will appear to us in the form that matches that mood. But first of all, we have to forget that we're not this body. Give up our identification as a man and woman and English and American and German and Indian and Hindu and whatever. And that's the purpose of all the tribulations in the material world. To convince the soul, actually, no, there's more to it than this, than just getting a body and then fighting for your life and struggling and trying to become the lord of others and getting everything taken away. Every time you get something, it's taken away. And, you know. So that's why it was described here in the purport that only the pure devotees of the Lord can understand these things. Krishna only gives that understanding to pure devotees of Him. Because they don't have any other desire. They don't have any other reason for living except to please Him, to satisfy Him. And His nature is to give back love, just like our nature is to give back love. When someone gives us some love, it's our nature to give back that love. And when the love is coming from a source that is pure and innocent, we feel more strongly to give back that love. Like when a little baby comes to give you something. The other day, Ragaleka's little girl was here, and she came to me and she went like this and just came to give me. My heart just immediately opened. I took it, and it was you just have this loving exchange, and it's completely different from any other kind of loving exchange. It's pure and innocent and very sweet, So when we're pure, and the person who is giving the love, or the person we're giving love to, is pure, then it's different. It's completely different. It's satisfying, and therefore Krishna doesn't give that love so easily. He can give benedictions very easily to mixed devotees who want something in the material world but are at the same time attached to Him. So He'll very easily give liberation or whatever opulence or the place one wants to live, whatever facilities. And He does. He gives His devotees so many facilities. I mean, I haven't had a job in 50 years. And here I am, I'm using this and I'm going here and there. I don't ask anybody anything for anything. And Krishna just provides all these things. He gave me a list of the people who, volunteered to keep me in this place, and it's amazing. It's no joke. I got my busted arm, and they got a $60,000 surgery for nothing. The hospital just decided to give it for charity. I mean, Hare Krishna beats insurance.
There was one thing that really stood out for me when I heard Krishna can be as hard as a thunderbolt or
soft as a rose. Yeah.
It's just that real duality. It's just really beautiful. Yeah.
And when he's hard as a thunderbolt or he's soft as a rose, the result is the same. We are accustomed to being in duality, and when someone teaches us soft like a rose, then it's very nice. And they treat us hard as thunderbolt, that's not very nice, and we try to avoid that, like the plague. But when Krishna does that, the person gets ultimate benefit, either.
So when you kill the various demons, they get
Yeah,
mercy of that.
yeah. That's what this chapter was about, all of the persons who became big enough demons. You have to be a pretty big demon to be killed directly by Krishna. But I was listening to Gopi Pranadam today, and he was talking about, yeah, that may be true, but still it's not very pleasant to come and have Krishna cut your head off. I mean, you may get liberation, but you're not going to get, except in very rare circumstances, where you get a personal form, be able to associate with him in the spiritual world by that process. Usually you get a temporary liberation in the Brahmajyoti or something like that. Or some position in the heavenly planet or something like that. I thought it was interesting. I was reflecting when we heard about the disappearance of the outer dynasty, and some of those persons had come from the heavenly planets to help Krishna, and some of them were eternal associates who came with him from the spiritual world. And the ones who were the eternal associates, they stayed back in Dwarka. And then when Krishna left, Dwarka, the sea, just came and covered Dwarka. And they all together just went back to the spiritual world to be with Krishna. And the Acharyas describe how these are not actually events. They're actually projections. Krishna is like a theater, like a drama. It happens just so they can go back. It's not like a hurricane hits America and causes everybody complete, pain and suffering. Not like that. And then the ones who were demigods, they went to Prabhas Kshetra and got drunk and beat each other with the metal toolies and then he went back to the heavenly planets. I read today that what's his name? What's the guy? Big scientist, English. The one that was paraplegic. Hawking. His last book was just finished by his family or somebody, and his conclusion was there was no God. That was his conclusion.
Froggish philosopher.
Huh?
Froggish philosopher.
Yeah, frog philosopher. And how did it all happen? How did this happen? Then I was reading something today that we were also reading in this chapter. It's all through Prabhupada's books that all of these wonderful things that came. Science didn't make fruit and vegetables and grains and air and all the things that give us sustenance and life and pleasure or whatever. We didn't manufacture any of those things. How there's no God, and he's got this whole convoluted, reasoning. And then I also read another thing recently where a bunch of scientists got together and came to the conclusion that there wasn't actually any reason why the universe should exist. It shouldn't be here. Can you imagine what kind of bewildered condition you'd be in to come to that conclusion? How much you must be suffering to just negate it all, It's the same as the Mayavad philosophy, just negate it. It's causing me so much suffering, there must not be a reason for this because I'm such a wonderful person,
Do you think that's because the want to be in control?
Excuse me?
Do you feel that that scientists' opinion, and the outcome of that was because they just want to be in control.
It's Krishna reciprocating with them
Okay.
because they want to forget.
Right.
Apoanamcha, sarvasachaham hridi sanavishto. I'm in every heart, Krishna says. And from me come matak smritir, jnanam, apoanamcha. Matak smritir means memory, jnana means knowledge, and apoanamcha means forgetfulness. So when they want to forget, it's Krishna who gives them the ability to forget. That's the irony of the situation. That they're claiming that there is no God, and it's Krishna who allows them to have that philosophy to forget him. But they must be suffering because there's no one who's not serving. There's no living being who's not serving another living being. Have to serve because it's our nature, that's who we are. It's like, so okay, for argument, for sense of argument, the scientists are saying you can't prove it. And we can say you can't prove it, that nothing existed, you know. Okay, so let's say for argument's sake, neither one of us can actually prove it. Okay, then what's the result of their philosophy? You know, nothing. When you die, that's it, finished. There's nothing. And you follow our philosophy, and there's at least the possibility that you can have, you know, eternal knowledge and bliss forever. Okay, take your choice. I mean, there's all these, you know, bingo, jackpot, you know, super lotto, whatever they are, where you can win $1 billion or billions of dollars or something, millions of dollars at least, or pounds, by just, you know, buying a ticket and a number, and everybody goes and puts all the money there, and somebody's just raking it in, you know, taking a little part of it and giving it away as the gift, you know, the prize. And then their lives get ruined to get that money, and then just don't know what to do with it. Shudras, they don't know what to do with it, and they just suffer even worse. It's amazing.
I heard Prabhupada say you would never go to a lawyer who can't explain the law correctly, so why does everyone put so much faith in scientists who don't even know how the universe or anything works?
Yes, exactly. I had a physics teacher in high school, and I was arguing with him about this point. And he said, no, he said, we're not looking for the absolute truth. It's the looking for the truth that gives us such. So I said, yeah, but all these different experiments you're teaching us, you always teach us to try to make the serendipity principle, the plus or minus, you know, variable that comes from the imperfect senses down to zero, right? So therefore you are looking for the, oh, he got so angry. I was lucky I got my A. I think he was gonna fail me just because I embarrassed him in front of the others, you know.
Yeah, they can never get to zero.
No.
It's always this big number.
Yeah. Which is the proof that you can't understand Krishna by your gross material senses. It's not possible. Yeah.
The knowledge in the Vedas and Srimad-Bhagavatam, you can't understand that knowledge unless you, I don't know, you can't understand it with the...
Yeah, unless you associate with
yeah.
Prabhupada, pure devotee.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yes. Shruti, hearing. We're just fortunate enough to be able to hear from Prabhupada.
And even the Sanskrit, when it's read
Yes.
For it. That makes complete sense, even though I don't understand
Yes.
it.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Yes.
Heard it. Yeah.
Yes, Priyakund.
Can I just read an amazing sentence from one of the purports, Maharaj?
Please do.
Devotees of the Lord never assert independent individuality. On the contrary, they utilize their individuality in the pursuit of the desires of the Lord.
Yes.
It's so wonderful.
Yes. That's pure devotional service. The difference between lust and love. Okay, now we've completed the up-to-date. We've made the chapter that we left out inadvertently somehow or other, even though it was a wonderful chapter. You know, Krishna's pastimes outside of Vrindavan. Anything?
What chapter? You're on chapter 4 now.
We're on chapter 7.
Chapter 7.
We just skipped a chapter. It was amazing.
So we've gone right.
And it's amazing because we're all following it. All of us are following it. We're doing it we started the third chapter while we were here. I think we were on the second chapter when we got here, towards the end of the second chapter. Then we finished. We started canto, second canto. We started the third canto when we were here. Yeah, none of us can understand how that happened. I mean, I'm so attached to doing it in order, you know, and I'm always, you know, I can't explain it, but whatever it was, Krishna wanted you all to hear this one, you know, this chapter. And it was short enough that we could get through the whole chapter. That was nice. Radharaman's point. Okay, we got to travel tomorrow, so I think we got to, yeah. Thank you very much for coming and joining us. I look forward to, I'm going to come back in December. I look forward to seeing you then. Please, let's continue to hear together. Tell Mantra Chaitanya that I was very sorry that I didn't see him again. But I understand he's, you know, lost his phone and he's living as a bachelor all of a sudden, and Hema's probably been taking care of him, so he's completely bewildered, probably doesn't know what to do without Hema. Are you two living in the ashram with them? That's what's happening? Oh, that's nice. That's wonderful. This is the yatra. This is the Kent yatra. Let's keep churning it, huh? Churning it and growing it. Okay, thanks all of you out in cyberspace for coming again and hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam all the way through, and now by the grace of Prafulla Mukhi Devi Dasi, who she'll probably watch this a little late because she's behind. That's why she found out that we that we missed the chapter, because she's still back in, waiting for chapter 3. So here it is, and thank her for that, for finding it. You know, she was more astute than all of us put together, because she noticed that we had missed out that chapter. So we all owe that to her, and we look forward to Bhakta Matt or Divide or whoever can arrange to put this back in the chronological order so that we can just hear it together. I mean, Matt and Rati Manjari have the idea of of opening up a YouTube channel so that we can put all these things and then we can order them in the order that we want to put them. So let's see. In the future, what happens. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Uddhava ki jai. Shri Vidura ji ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.